Brian Kelly and his Louisiana accent are in as the new head coach, and there's currently a three-man race for that starting quarterback spot. Our FPI has LSU winning 7.7 games this year. That's a little better than last season, and we'll learn about the Tigers right away when they take on Florida State in a Sunday night opener in New Orleans. LSU doesn't leave their home state until October 1st when they visit Auburn. Alabama will be stopping by the Bayou in the first week of November, and LSU closes its season Thanksgiving weekend at Texas A&M. All right, so let's go floor and ceiling with the Tigers. And Steve, I'm going to start with you. You give us the floor, and then Roman, you give us the ceiling.
All right, I'll go with the floor. This is tough for me because I expect a lot from Brian Kelly. I think he's going to do a great job there, but the floor for me is 6 wins. And that would only be because I know everybody's going to talk about the quarterback situation. I think it has to do with the lack of depth on the offensive line and those guys running into problems about the consistency of the defensive lines in the SEC. So the floor for me for LSU would be 6 wins.
Well, Steve, I think that's a great point, bringing up the offensive line. And one way to kind of fix that problem without doing too much is putting in the right starting quarterback. And for me, my ceiling is 11 wins for this LSU team. You put in Miles Brennan. That is the reason why I'm going with 11 wins. Miles Brennan, he comes in, lights a fire under this offense and his team under Brian Kelly and his coaching staff and his prowessness. And now you got Kayshon Boutte, one of the most explosive playmakers and wide receivers in all of the country. So Miles Brennan to Kayshon Boutte left, same thing to the right and over the middle. Reminds all those LSU fans of just a couple years ago when you had Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase. It's very similar, but not the same.
Okay, yeah, and it's definitely not the same. When you think about LSU, the last 2 seasons, they've thrown 56 touchdowns. That season with Joe Burrow, that championship-winning season, he had 60 alone by himself. So they have a lot to make up for, obviously. All right, let's keep it in the SEC. Ole Miss went 10-3 last year, losing in the Sugar Bowl to Baylor. Lane Kiffin has a lot to replace this season, including his starting quarterback, offensive and defensive coordinators. FPI has Ole Miss, where LSU is, 7.7 wins for the year. This season, the Rebels visit Georgia Tech for just their second meeting with the Yellow Jackets in the last 50 seasons. Ole Miss opens league play with Kentucky and Vanderbilt, but the schedule then turns to LSU, Texas A&M, and Alabama in back-to-back games. Roman, I'm going to start with you here. You give us the floor, and then Steve, you give us the ceiling.
All right, Christine, I got to say this part real quick to understand this. So I'm going with the floor at 5.5 games. I know you can't win or lose a half game, but I don't trust 18, 19-year-old kids, okay? So I'm just put that out there first. So I got 5.5, and that is because what if all these transfers come in and the chemistry problem in the mixture is just off a little bit? On top of all the transfers, let's talk about the defense. If this defense of Ole Miss takes a step back to where they were in 2020, they have no chance in winning. Let's talk about a couple numbers. In 2020, they allowed 38 points a game. Last year, they got that number all the way down to 24. And then also yards per game, 2020, 519 yards a game. Last year, they got that all the way down to 419 yards. That's a whole touchdown. That's a whole field across. So if the defense goes backwards, this team will go backwards.
I totally see where you're coming from there, Roman. I think this is why Lane Kiffin gets paid the big bucks. And when I say the ceiling, I think it's 9 wins. And when we showed that schedule, it is very, very doable at the beginning of the season to figure out who's going to be the quarterback, who's going to catch the passes that were guys left. Both coordinators are gone from last year's team. They got to, feel some things out that way. So I think the schedule allows them to get off to a really good start this year. But that back end of the schedule, I don't know if they have the goods to keep up with that. So I would say 9 wins is the ceiling for Ole Miss.
Roman, you mentioned the defensive issues, and we at least know that their offense will be solid. Only Ohio State has averaged more yards per game than Ole Miss in the last 2 seasons with Lane Kiffin. So that's at least a positive on that front. Okay, so how about some Gator bait? Because Florida's coming off of a disappointing 6-7 season. Billy Napier takes over as head coach, and Anthony Richardson is back as the starting quarterback. Our FPI sets the number of regular season wins for the Gators at 6.9. They open their season with 2 tough home games. They have Utah and, of course, their very best friends, Kentucky. And then after the world's largest outdoor cocktail party against Georgia and Jacksonville, Billy Napier and company will finish with 3 of their final 4 games on the road. So, Steve, I'm going to have you tell us the floor, and then Roman follow up with the ceiling for Florida.
I love the hire of Billy Napier. I really do. I think he's going to bring some stability to the program. He's going to recruit better, and that's what the fans wanted. The problem is I don't know how much talent is on that roster there. So I put the floor at 5 wins, and I worry about that roster, and we showed the schedule. The beginning of the year is so crucial. Anthony Richardson, there's a lot on the table for him. In those first 2 games, he's going to face 2 really good defenses, and I'm just not sure Florida has the goods to keep up and maintain, win both those games and continue on and win more games. So I think the floor is 5. I think the stability will be there with Napier, and they should be fired up about the coming seasons.
All valid points, Steve. So I'm going with the ceiling, and my ceiling is at 9.5 games. Another half one. I get it. I got it. But let me go into it. And the reason why is because you are Florida. All right, you look at this early schedule. All right, you got Utah. Utah's never been to a swamp. You're coming to Florida, baby. You're going to win that game. Kentucky, you just talked about it, Christine. Outside the last 2 years, you are Florida. You always beat Kentucky. There's nobody to talk about. At Tennessee, don't even worry about it. You won 16 out of the last times because you are Florida. You will win that game as well. All right, LSU. LSU hadn't been to the swamp since the shoe game. We all remember that. Well, guess what? Tonight, that night will be your time to beat Florida again. You'll finish the road off. Texas A&M. Who is that? You always beat Texas A&M. They're always talking about trying to win championships. Florida, you win championships. You are Florida. 9.5.
Okay, things were almost promising for Florida last season, but then Vanderbilt was the only team that had a worse league record, and they won 0 games than Florida, or in the SEC last season. So I mean, Florida can only go up from here. I mean, technically, that's why their ceiling is 9.5.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.